Welcome back everybody to another episode of The Road Chose Me. My name's Dan and today we are designing and building the water system for my Overland Jeep camper. I've learned a lot over the years from my previous expeditions and what I built in those vehicles for a water system, and today I'm improving on it in every possible way. I've got hot water this time, so I'm gonna have running hot and cold water and a shower for the first time ever. Got a really nice sink with a multi-function tap. Got a 0.5 micron carbon filter with a UV lamp. My water once again is going to be double filtered and double UV treated. I've got a 12-volt pump, an accumulator, a tank is on the way, a ton of piping, connectors and fittings are on the way. You want to learn how to design and build your own water system for your Overland or van life project? Let's get into all the details right now. Here it comes. I have to fit all of this in there.
Starting out on a huge project like this, I feel like I can get stuck in analysis paralysis and just overthink where everything should go. So instead, let's just rip the band-aid off and punch a big hole in the side of the camper. What could possibly go wrong? I've enlisted my brother's help again, and here we are punching a hole for the shower. This is a really nifty little multi-function unit, and I'll show you how it works towards the end when it's actually finished. And there's a link in the description too for everything I'm installing here, from the shower to the hot water unit, the water pump, all the adapters, the fittings, the hoses, all of that. Check down in the description if you do want to get any of this. And you can see here I've made up some spreader plates again out of aluminum. I'm using my same old adhesive, also a link in the description for that, and then bolting it through with stainless steel bolts, nylocks, washers, spread out that load, make sure it's watertight, and there we go. We have a nice, completely sealed up shower on the outside, and it kind of looks like it was always there. That's the best installation in my mind.
So now it comes time to figure out where I'm actually going to mount all of this stuff. And I decided a long time ago that this side of the Jeep would be for water storage, and well, the other side of the Jeep's going to be for 12 volts and electronics. And part of the reason I'm doing that is because the sink is already here, and so that means to have the least amount of plumbing, to have the lines be as short as possible, keep everything as close to the sink as I possibly can. I think that makes the most sense. So that's why I put the shower where I did, and that's why the water tank is going to be down here underneath the floor of the camper. So if you remember, this is the composite floor of the camper. This is the honeycomb core. Under here, the original Jeep sheet metal still exists, and it actually continues back. This is where the rear seat passengers used to be able to have their feet. There's quite a large volume under there that is perfect for a water tank. So I'll get to the water tank later. I promise I'll show you exactly how all of that works. But for now, I'm just working on the assumption that that's where the water tank is going to be, in under there. So everything else can be really close to the water tank. And so when trying to fit everything in, basically this is what I come up with, is that the water heater is by far the biggest item, and it takes up a lot of the space inside this cabinet. And it's kind of disappointing that it takes up so much space, but there isn't much I can do about it if I want to have hot water. I rotated it 90 degrees, I've tried it the other way around, I've flipped it a few different times. This is kind of the part of the project where you just spend time looking and thinking, hold things in place, see what you think, do they work where you're holding them, or what's the best way to go about this. So that's what it's going to look like in here. Let's go around outside and I'll show you out there. So here I am on the outside of the Jeep. Obviously I have my little access hatch, which without the access hatch, I don't know that I would be able to do this. Annoyingly, I'm going to be using up a lot of this storage space that I thought would be useful to have as outside. So be it, this will just be water central. I'll have to open this to fill the water system. I'll have to open this to get the shower out and set up the shower. So this outside access hatch can just be water central. I'm okay with that. So that's what the water heater is going to look like. The control is going to be on this side, which that'll work, doesn't matter. I don't think I'm going to change the temperature too often. And then I'm just holding things in places and just trying to think about how it all works. And so the water pump could go somewhere here like this. That is obviously not set in stone yet. And I'm really thinking about where the water filter should go. And it kind of sits nicely up here. It's out of the way. It's using up the 3D space that I have. I can mount it nicely to this aluminum frame. So this is starting to look like something that's workable. And what I've been doing the whole time, trying to visualize and trying to understand how this is all gonna go, is I drew myself a diagram of the whole system. I'll throw it on the screen now. And every time I'm visualizing and thinking about where will a hose go from or to, I go back to my diagram and I'm like, okay, so this needs to connect to a T-junction, this needs to go to a Y, this goes up to the accumulator or to the sink or to the back of the shower outlet. I just keep coming back and thinking about what's the best way to lay everything out. One, so that it all fits as tightly as possible in the package, but also two, so that the plumbing isn't insanely convoluted. And one other piece of this whole puzzle that I have, this time I'm going to run a SureFlow accumulator tank. This little tank is pressurized and it holds a small amount of water in it and air pressure. And what it does is it kind of acts as like a buffer so that the pump doesn't have to cycle on and off as often. If you just turn the tap on a little bit and use a little bit of water, it'll just take it out of this, and the pressure imbalance in here will force the water out of here and it'll come out my tap, and the pump will never even actually turn on. And then when this thing is empty, the pump will turn on, it'll refill this, and then the pump will turn off again, even if you still have a tap running or something, because the water's coming out of here. So this helps with the pump cycling on and off, and it also shouldn't make things quieter, it'll extend the pump life, has a whole bunch of benefits, but I decided to use one this time because we have the sink, because we want to use that as like a regular house sink. Hopefully we can do it without making a ton of noise. And so just trying to think about, where do I mount it? Where does it fit? It can kind of go anywhere in the system, interestingly. It does not have to be close to the pump. It does not have to be close to the sink. But actually, I kept thinking about this sink void here. Because it hangs down, I kind of lose all of this space back here. Like, I'm never really going to be able to store anything back there. So I started really thinking about, should I just put this thing up here? I could easily just bond a plate to that wall, have some bosses, and have it mounted there. Over here actually works as well. Right over in the back corner here is a perfectly valid spot. So I actually think I might put it here. I might bolt straight through this wood platform, and then it's going to have plumbing lines. One will be coming from below, so it'll go straight down this wall and through this gap, and the other one will actually just come to plumb into the tap that's on the sink. So this is a nice short run as well. So I think actually the accumulator makes sense there. I'm starting to figure out where things belong, and to be honest, I could spend the rest of the week coming up with ideas or moving things around. At some point I kind of just have to lock some stuff in. It's easier, I think, to lock in some of the smaller components, some of the less critical components. Let's just mount it, bolt it in, call it done, move on and do what's next. This job is already going to take long enough. I don't need it to take 3 weeks.
And so that's exactly what I did. I punched holes through the wooden cabinet face, used stainless steel bolts and nylocks, and mounted it right there in behind the sink.
The next thing I'm going to mount is the water filter. And so this is an upgrade on what I've run in the past. This is called the Stealth Flex by Guzzle H2O. And there's a link in the description for a discount if you want to pick up this system. I feel like this is just an improvement on what I've run in the past. So this is a 0.5 micron carbon activated filter, super good filtration for anywhere in the world. And as well as that, it comes with a built-in UV lamp. And this is really cool because it has a flow sensor. And so you actually leave this thing plugged into power the whole time, and it will just turn the UV lamp on when it senses water flowing. And it can turn it on instantly. It doesn't have a warm-up time, which my one in Africa did. So I think that's a big advantage. And this system is called the Flex because the UV lamp is not hard mounted to the filter. You can also just get a Stealth 5, which is this one, or the Stealth 10 is this, just the filter's twice as big. But the reason I have the Flex is because it gives you more mounting options. And so what I need to do now is figure out where the filter is going to go, where the UV lamp is going to go, and then I just connect them together. And so they use push together connectors like this on this blue hose. I can trim that to length. And then they actually sell a kit to just connect it directly to PEX, which I'll be using. So I can just push these in where I need to, and that'll make connecting it together to my whole system really easy. So yeah, I'm really happy. This filter should be extremely good, make safe drinking water anywhere in the world, and an improvement on what I've done in the past.
My water system is using up a lot of my storage in this cabinet, and I'm going to try to minimize that as much as possible. I already know the hot water tank will be down the bottom of this area, so why not use up the space that's above the hot water tank and that's where I decided to cram in the UV lamp. It does make everything really tight, and it's pretty difficult to reach in here and get everything, but hopefully the only thing I'll ever really need to service is to thread that filter off and thread it back on again. Everything else should just stay exactly like I'm putting it together now. Fingers crossed. So the plan is really coming together, and here's what it looks like from the inside. I'm starting to lock in exactly where the hot water heater will go, and from the other side, here's where the water pump will sit and how much free space I'll have. I think this plan's going to work. Let's start locking it in. To mount the pump, I make this aluminium plate and drill 4 holes through it and mount some bolts directly through it that will act as bosses. That way I'll be able to unbolt the pump if I ever need to, but I'm not having to actually punch holes through the floor. I really like being able to just bond aluminum straight onto this composite. It's starting to become a bit of a habit, but it works really well. And yeah, I did cut those down a bit before I actually permanently mounted it. Then it was time to drill and start mounting the actual hot water tank. This thing can hold 8 litres of hot water, so it will be quite heavy, and I want to make sure that it's really permanently and strongly mounted to the floor. So I'm using huge big aluminum spreader plates, and there is a plate on each side, top and bottom. So there's the usual old bond prep, lots of sanding, scuff it up, lots of my adhesive, and stainless steel bolts right through with Nylox. Thanks to my brother, we were able to get these done up. I bought this hot water heater from Expedition Upfitters, and it is a purely 12-volt electric water heater, and it can pull about 17 amps when the heating element is running. It holds 8 litres of water, and it's really well insulated to keep that water hot as long as possible. I thought about getting one that used the excess heat from the radiator, but I decided not to mess with the engine coolant loop. At least this way, if something goes wrong with this unit, I've only lost hot water. I haven't also lost engine cooling. With all the major system elements in place, I can start plumbing it all together. And basically, I'm just consulting my diagram, thinking about which one goes where, and I started with the easiest on purpose, and that actually is the outflow of the pump always goes to the inlet of the filter, no matter what. Takes a bit to get your head around, but the difference between fill mode and use mode, by always going to the filter, it means the water gets filtered on the way into the tank and the way out of the tank. This same setup worked flawlessly for me in Africa and Australia, and I have a whole DIY video on how I built it in the Australian Gladiator. If you want to build something like this yourself, it looks complicated, but it actually isn't. This time around, I've decided to use PEX fittings to hold all the connections together. So these are basically stainless steel crimp rings, and you use a special crimp tool to crimp them on, and in theory they never come off. You kind of have to destroy the crimp ring if you really do want to get it off. These things are great because they're super fast to do up, but they can't rattle loose, unlike the kind of hose clamps I've used in the past. So I think this is a good upgrade. I decided not to use the push-in type of PEX because they're really expensive and you have to use a special tool to heat up the plastic and blah, blah, blah. This seemed like a really nice way to go. Not breaking the bank, but also a really sturdy, long-lasting connection. And you might be curious about the hose I'm using. Normally PEX hose is rock solid and it's impossible to bend without kinking it. So this stuff is a brand new product made by Expedition Upfitters. They designed it from scratch to work in vehicles in van builds. So it's designed to work with PEX, it's food grade safe, it's pressure rated, and as you can see, it is really flexible, and it comes in red and blue as well, so you can color code your system, which is pretty nice to keep track of everything. When it comes to finding a water tank for your build, I don't have any amazing insight. I basically spent 2 entire days Googling as much as I could. RV water tank, drinking water tank, food grade water tank, all the combinations I could think of. And then every company, I just scoured their website to see what sizes of tanks they made. I'd measured the space that I have here. My limiting factor was the height. And so I only had 7 inches of height to work with. And then I just tried to buy the biggest tank that I could find that would fit in that void. And there it is. I actually found this for sale in Canada. This one was about $200, and I could even define where the fittings were. If I wanted to have one custom made, the cheapest price I got was $1,000. So I'm pretty happy with $200. So that's where it's going to go. You saw me just insulate the floor of the Jeep. I figure why not if I can prevent the tank from freezing. And the fittings here are 1/2 inch NPT, which makes it really easy just to thread in some elbows with some nice Teflon tape. And I had all the insulation-y stuff left over, so I thought, why not insulate the entire tank? It certainly can't hurt, and I hope it'll just stop it freezing when temperatures get down that low. We do have the diesel heater in the cabin, and so my idea is that the cabin will never go below freezing anyway. I'll let you know how that works out long term. With the insulation on, it was a bit of a squeeze to get it in there, and I've got a ratchet strap to stop it moving side to side. It can't hardly move at all anyway because it's wedged in there, but I'll also have something to detain it at the front so it can't move front to back. And again, now it's just a matter of connecting it all up. In the middle there, I've got a breather hose. On the top right, that's the fill hose, and bottom right is going to be where the water comes out of the tank, or the drain hose. Again, this 3-hose combination, it's what I've done in all my other builds, and it's always worked flawlessly, so I'm just going to go with it again. I probably could combine either the fill and the drain, or maybe even the vent, but I just don't see the need. Keep it simple, do what works, and I know this works well for tens of thousands of miles. Earlier, I drilled a big hole in the floor to run the hoses up and down to the water tank, and I put nice rubber grommets top and bottom so the composite material can't abrade the hose. And you can see my plumbing has gotten quite a bit more complicated, but again, just go back and refer to your system diagram and you can't go wrong. Connecting up the shower is very straightforward. They're 1/2 inch NPT fittings on the back again, and you just connect up the hot and cold. It deals with mixing it when you use the shower. So at this point, I've finished all the plumbing and I've wired up the pump, and I can finally fill the system. The way that I designed it, because I want to filter and UV treat the water on the way into the tank, it means I do a suction fill, and you have to suck the water through the pump, through the filter, through the UV lamp, and then into the tank. So that's what I'm doing here. All right, so the tank must be about 1/3 full by now, that bucket. And now it's time, I've just flipped all of the ball valves, it's time to start using the system. So we went well pumping water into the tank. What happens when we try and pump it out of the tank? So I've switched a few ball valves. We don't want to be suctioning water from the suction hose. So I just closed that. We're suctioning it from the tank instead, and I open the one down below. And then where water comes out, we don't want it to go back into the tank. We want it to come from the filter and UV lamp and go everywhere else. This one goes to the shower and the hot water tank. This one goes upstairs to the sink. So if I turn the pump on right now, it's probably going to take a while to build some pressure, but more of this now is going to get exposed to pressurized water. So if there are any leaks, they'll show up. And there you can see the filter filling with water for the first time as it sees pressure, and then it'll come out of the filter and to all the rest of the system. It'll end up at the back of the shower, it'll end up filling the accumulator and at the sink. I've got everything turned off, so it should build pressure and then turn the pump off. And there it goes. That took quite a while, but I think the accumulator tank is now full now and up to pressure, so the pressure switch on the pump just cut off. Small caveat here, I have not finished plumbing in the drain from the sink, so I don't want water to go down the drain. I'm just gonna have it fill this bucket instead. But we should be able to turn on the cold water tap, I hope, and water should come out of this tap for the first time ever. Let's see what happens. Cold water, lots of air in the system obviously. Once that air works its way through, we have running water in our Jeep coming out of the water tank, through the filter and UV lamp, up into the accumulator, through the accumulator, and then out of our tap here. If we turn the tap off, it should stop. And there we go, the pump built pressure. And this will be interesting to see what the accumulator does. If I turn the pump off, so the power to the pump is off, we should still be able to get some water here because that pressure is coming out of the accumulator tank. Again, more water. Again, more water if you're washing your hands or doing brushing your teeth or something. And then now we're starting to run out of water pressure. So we need to turn the pump back on. Pump builds pressure. Filling the accumulator tank full, pump has cut off. Now we'll be back to full pressure again. There we go. So this is going really great. I'm super happy with this. Once again, running water inside a Jeep with a sink. I'm gonna have a really good look around for leaks. I'm gonna double check that everything's doing what I think it's doing. So off camera, I just filled the tank up completely full. And as I always used to do in my Africa Jeep and in the Gladiator, I basically just filled it until it started overflowing out of the breather hose. That way I know it's completely full. You can't go wrong with that. And I think the next step is to turn on the hot water heater. So they do make it very clear in the instructions, you do not want to turn the power on and let the heating element heat unless the tank is full of water. Makes sense, you might burn out the heating element. And so what I installed is a cutoff valve over here. So right now, the tank itself is not seeing any pressurized water. When I flip this valve, water will start going into the tank, hopefully no leaks. And of course the pump has kicked on because that tank is 8 litres in capacity. So I expect it now to pump 8 litres out of the main water tank into the hot water tank. And then once the pump cuts off again, I'll know that the tank is actually full, the tank is at capacity. Then I can turn the power on and let's start getting some hot water going. So I'm having a good look around. I'm not seeing any leaks anywhere, which I'm really happy about. Something else the instructions for the hot water said is that you may need to let air flow in, because right now the thing's probably just filling up with air and water. Air can't get out. So I've got the tap turned all the way to hot, and if I turn it on, yeah, we start to get a whole bunch of air coming out of the hot water system. And now the pump can kick on again, fill the tank some more. This makes sense to me. The tank needs to be able to get air out before it can be completely full of water. So I'll keep this process going for a while, see how it goes until I start getting, well, a solid stream of water that is purely hot on the mixer tap. So that now is just coming straight through the hot water tank. This is good, the hot water tank's full of water now.
Now that the tank's full of water, I can wire it up. And this can pull nearly 20 amps, so make sure you use some decent gauge wire.
Okay, so for the first time ever, I just installed a fuse in my fuse block for the hot water heater. And now you can see the hot water heater has come to life. And currently I have the dial on the absolute lowest setting that it goes, and it says 26. So if I turn it up, there I heard a click, maybe that actually, there you go, and the little red lights come on, so the heating element is on. Let's put it on like it was on low. That's about halfway, I think. We'll see what temperature it gets up to. It's a bit above low. And we'll see how that goes. Let's also check, see if we can see how much current it's currently drawing. The water heater is rated to draw 20 amps, so that makes sense. Well, it's actually 9 out of the battery and the solar's putting in 9. So we really are taking about 20 amps right now. That's how much the water heater is using to heat the water. So let's give it some time. I'm gonna go and do some other jobs, come back and check on our hot water status. So let's turn the mixer tap to full hot. Not hot yet. There we go. That's pretty warm. And that is hotter than I can keep my finger under. We legitimately have hot water in a Jeep. Let's try middle of the mixer tap. Definitely a little bit colder. Mixer tap seems to work great. We get full hot. We get medium hot.
So the last thing to test on this entire setup is the outdoor shower. And I've never had a shower in any of my vehicles before, so I'm pretty excited about this. And you can see it plugs in with this kind of strange mechanism that once you've connected it, it pressurizes the hose, and actually the pump kicked in and filled the hose with water. And then you can just turn that grey handle from cold all the way over to hot. And that's what changes the temperature. Just like that, it actually works really well. I was pretty surprised. The shower head itself sprays out a lot of water, and it's coming out at the same pressure the pump can push it through the whole system. Almost immediately, that was too hot for me to keep my finger in, and so have to find that right Goldilocks zone to just make the perfect shower temperature. Overall, this is incredible to have. I'm so stoked to have a shower. And in fact, some of the best showers I've had in my life have been outside at -40, so I'm not worried about it being outside in the cold.
So there we go, the whole system is working really well. Final job, let's get the sink drain plumbed in. I've got to punch a big hole through the floor. I've been procrastinating on this one for a long time. Let's get at it.
The sink I'm using is actually made by Dometic for RVs, and they make the mixer tap as well. But they're so strange. I could not buy the sink in North America. I ended up getting it used off Craigslist. And the mixer tap I had my brother buy in Australia and send to me. For the life of me, I just couldn't find it in North America. But anyway, here I am making up the drain pipe, using some pretty standard drain pipe fittings from the hardware store, and then just figuring out the jigsaw puzzle of how to get it actually down and then out the bottom of the Jeep. And so the plan here is that the pipe will sit about there where I've got it. It's kind of in the middle of everything, but it makes the drain pipe the shortest routing. So I needed to punch this hole through the floor, which I was procrastinating. I sealed up all of that hole to make it so that water won't damage anything, and then glued in the pipe, including this ball valve. And the idea here is I don't have a grey water tank, but the pipe itself will be a grey water tank when I turn that ball valve off. The volume of the pipe will hold whatever liquid I've put down the drain if I'm camping somewhere where it's not appropriate just to dump stuff on the ground if I brush my teeth or whatever. I think that'll work well enough, and it saves me from having an entire grey water tank. So drill a hole through the bottom of the cabinet, through the bottom of the Jeep, and then connect all the pieces together, and just like that, we have a functioning drain pipe that is actually also a grey water tank in a pinch when it needs to be. And here it is, the whole system finished and done, no more plumbing. I'm really happy with how it turned out. It's been a big job, but for the first time ever, I have running hot and cold water. I have a shower, and of course, double filtered and double UV treated drinking water. I'm good to go anywhere on the planet. And once again, thanks for watching. Thanks to my Patreon supporters. If you have any questions, fire them in the comments down below. And remember, there's links to literally everything from this whole system down in the description. Have fun out there.